Let's take a look at the Layout tab here. This is where your 2D patterns are laid out. You can see all the patterns for the zebra that I've used in the other videos here. And the way this works is if you want to move the space around, you just click and drag. If you want to zoom in and out, you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse or the same other controls as you would use in the model view. So the documentation for the navigation in the model view mostly applies to this view as well. If I want to pan, I can also hold down the scroll wheel as well. The tool on the left-hand side here is the Arrange Pattern tool. We'll get into this in more detail in another video, but this lets you move and rotate your patterns around. Up here, this lets you add patterns to this layout. So let's say, for instance, there are patterns that I haven't added to this that I want to add. This allows me to select patterns, and then I could add them to this layout. So I could have duplicates, or in the case where I've created a layout that doesn't have default patterns, I can have them added here. This allows me to create a new layout. Pandafold is designed so that you can have multiple layouts for different purposes. So maybe, for example, for the zebra, I'm working on a mohawk. So maybe I want a layout that's just specifically for the mohawk so that I don't have to deal with all of the little patterns for that. This also allows us to configure how this layout works. Will we always add patterns to it or only for certain materials? So if I choose only for certain materials, I can select the materials I want to have automatically added here. So this might make sense if you're doing laser cutting or if you're doing projection work or work with a projector. And then how do we want to deal with our grain line orientation? If there's right now at the moment, I don't think this actually works all that well. I don't actually think it works at all. The software is still very much alpha software, so there's things that are missing. The output is how you want to deal with the output of this particular layout. In this case, I have it set to printer, but you could say you want a fixed sized SVG, like if you have a laser cutter with a certain bed size, or dynamic sized SVG, which will just change and adjust dynamically as you go. In the case of a printer output, you can set all your paper sizes here. So let's actually, instead of adjusting this or creating a new layout, let's adjust this layout. So we can see right now, this is set to letter. If I set it to A4 and I click accept, it's going to adjust this for an A4 paper size now. If I go back here and I set it to A0, we'll see that it's now set out these patterns so they could be printed on huge sheets of A0 paper. The next icon we have here is the print icon. So this will just save to a PDF. And then lastly, we have the project icon, which will open the projector window. We'll cover that in much more detail in another video. Then on the upper right here, so we have how do we want to view these patterns? So we can say we want to view them by the color that's associated with the materials. And this, say for example, we were going to break this up into all black patterns on one sheet and all white on another. This would allow us to adjust that. Then we have the ability to change how the connections are shown between patterns. So we can turn on all of the connections, which looks kind of like a rat's nest, but this might be useful to you if you're trying to create an assembly guide so that you can see how everything fits together. Or you can say only select or only show the connections for the selected pattern, or don't show any connections. On the far right here, this is where we select the layouts that we're viewing. So I talked earlier about the Mohawk layout. If I want to switch to that, this is how I switch to it. Let me go back to the other layout here. And then I have my tree here. And this works the same as it does in the model view. If I right click on any of these, I'll get a context sensitive menu that will show you the details about the particular pattern or patterns I have selected. And it works the same as it does in the model view, where if I select multiple items, then I can manipulate multiple items at once. And then at the bottom here, I have the properties for a specific item. So if I want to set the pattern name here, I can. And then I also have the ability, if I want to orient these all, so let's say for instance, I wanted to orient all of these patterns so that their grain lines face a particular way. So the grain line being the arrow here, or the orientation of the pattern. So you might want to adjust the grain lines to point the same way if you're projecting these out on a piece of fabric and you've um, aligned them so they're very tight and they've optimized this space, or if you're going to laser cut them. So we can just say arrange by grain line, and I can select a particular grain line orientation. And it's just going to rotate all the patterns so that they point in that grain line. It's still up to me to go through here, and if you hit escape, it will undo the selection. Hit escape again, it'll undo it again. So it's up to me to come here and adjust all of these if I wanted to so that they don't overlap now. I'm going to go back and undo this. So now let's imagine that we wanted to just match the orientation of a particular pattern here. Like we're going to say, I want everything to point as the same orientation of two here. I can just right click on this and say, all patterns should match this orientation. And now they've all been aligned so they match that particular orientation. So hopefully this was a helpful overview of the layout view in the software.